Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars, and today I get to introduce my dear friend and past employee, Clay Curtis. Now, I want you to know that I was not excited to hire Clay when I took him on in my exotic car franchise. Clay's wife was the friend of the wife of one of the other bosses in my dealership, and that's why I was supposed to hire him. You can imagine how excited I was about that. I put him through the grinder. He ended up coming through with flying colors. It's very interesting to listen to the perspective that these customers taught him. And you might be interested to learn about at what speed the tires stop making contact on the road in a Ford GT40. Enjoy, subscribe, comment below. She says, well, the hood would either be this cloth, this cloth, this cloth, or this cloth. And you'd probably want to match the carpet. And I'm like, a cloth hood? And it took me 5 more minutes for her to help me understand that meant the convertible top. And I'm supposed to be the guy. You know, I'm the director of operations.
Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Stearns.
So, Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars. And who could I be connected more through cars than my dear friend and understudy, Clay Curtis?
Well, thank you for having me, Jeff. I really do appreciate it. It's been, I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. You were pretty influential in my younger years in a positive way. I'm looking forward to having a nice chat with you and kind of retelling some old stories and laugh and maybe a little bit of crying too.
I hope that we can get to a little bit of crying. Then I'll know I'll made it as a talk show host. Well, like the guy on Jerry Maguire.
Yes.
Are you going to cry on that show? But, Clay, what's nice for me about doing this podcast is calling people out of the past and have them be just willing to do this with me.
Sure.
So I appreciate it. And, your $20 will be in the mail after.
No payment needed. I've been really looking forward to this. I came back from hiding out in the bush just for this.
And thank you for that. So for the listening audience, wondering why Clay was off the grid or why he came back onto the grid, Clay is someone that I know very, very well. And Clay is someone that sold cars with me in our Rolls, Bentley, and Lotus new car department. And of course, we sold, you name the exotic used. And, I'll give Clay a compliment. I hate giving Clay compliments because I need to keep him on his toes. I think I pretty much managed you through exception, right? Like just what you weren't doing. Like, don't tell me what you did. We already got that. What else can we have?
Don't tell me about the pain. Just tell me about the baby.
That's right. That's right. And I think you remember how warm and fuzzy I was when you were brand new and you wanted to just come sit at my desk and just BS about cars.
Yeah, I really loved coming in at 8:32 when you were still up in the war room upstairs at the mansion. And we had those old Nextels and you would click. We started 8:30, not 8:32. Thanks. Click.
So
I remember that.
For the listener, on top of we were upstairs and could see when our tardy employees rolled in. To get a grip, if this is interesting, I hope it's interesting to you. I mean, if you sold cars, this could be interesting to you, but I'm really trying to make this interesting. What I really hope to deliver to the audience, the product that I hope to deliver, the perfect steak that I hope to deliver to the guests. And Clay, when we were together selling, I mean, I just wanted to deliver that perfect steak, that perfect experience.
Of course.
To our client. But what I'd like to deliver to the listener of this podcast is to get a feel about what was going on in the podcast, in the car business, forgive me. And what Clay's talking about in the upstairs storeroom is when we started this exotic car department, this Rolls and Bentley department, we didn't want to park the cars outside because the sun would, and birds and sprinklers and whatever would ruin the paint. A lot of them had delicate paint, a lot of lacquer paint, that sort of thing. You really didn't want to put a high-speed buffer and compound on the fender of a Ferrari or an old Rolls Corniche just because it got hard water from the sprinkler. And then we, of course, didn't want them dusty, and the sun would destroy the interior. As expensive as Connolly hides are and A-grade hides, if you imagine your most expensive $1,500 pair, not that I would have it, but just imagine it, of Italian glove leather, just because they're expensive doesn't mean they're durable. They'd probably be the first to fall apart in a snowball fight, or the first to look bad if you left them out in the sun for a few weeks getting rained on. So I don't want you to look down on, oh, these expensive interiors, they're so not durable. I mean, because they were such high quality and so supple and smelled so good, they also didn't do too well in the sun. So we would park them in the service drive where people would pull through with their new and used Cadillacs and Land Rovers, and we'd have 4 or 5 or 6 cars in the lane there, hidden out back. So we had no visible cars. And then where we worked, starting with myself, and then with a coworker CJ, and then with a coworker Randy, and then with coworker Clay here, we were working from a plastic. And tell me if I'm, call me out here if I'm exaggerating.
I'm letting you go. You're right. You're so far so good.
We were working from a white plastic wallpaper folding table, right or wrong?
True.
3 of us sharing a single 10-inch, 11-inch, 12-inch little Sony Bio laptop, which made us the first employee in the dealership with a laptop. No one had one on their desk. And the reason...
contents in Outlook.
And our CRM was Outlook. And the reason that we used Outlook was you could search by keyword. You could put notes in it. So if you took in a black Turbo R trade-in and you say, oh gosh, who was looking for one of those? Geez, I remember the guy carrying the Poodle the other day. So I could search by Turbo R or search by Poodle or some other keyword, and the 5 people that we put that in the notes would show up, and we'd say, oh yeah, and we'd start calling that person. We were making, and by the way, this was a framed in with like industrial carpet over the cement in the storeroom upstairs of a Cadillac dealership building.
With no showroom.
No showroom, no real office. We would go downstairs. Whoever had the chick got the apartment. Whoever had the customer would get the office downstairs. And 3 of us, until Clay came, we were already in our own building by the time Clay came, but 3 of us would make about 100.
War room. I started in the war room.
Oh, you started in the war room?
I did.
I thought we were in the new building by the time you came.
Nope. I watched it get finished off and then moved in there.
Okay, so you were man number 4
in the war room.
So here's what I don't understand, because the table was against the wall the long way. The computer was at the end. We had one of us on each side and one of us at the end. Where were you sitting?
I was squeezed into the smallest spot on the desk on a corner. So every time I'd even try to scoot my chair in, I get stabbed in the gut.
But the corner of the...
I knew I was home.
The corner of the wallpaper table. So this is how you really know you made it in the car business, when you made it to the storeroom, to the wallpaper table.
That's exactly what I thought.
So what we would do is in the morning, there would be 200 or 300 or 400 reminders of people to call that would pop up in Outlook. And we'd hit print and print them all, because we're all sharing the one laptop, and pass them out. Call the customer, leave a message, talk to them, whatever we did, write a note on the paper. And then whenever the computer wasn't being used, someone could then enter their notes from their handwritten notes.
Remind me again what the result was of all that calling when we had no showroom and just a little room upstairs. My memory's foggy.
We were selling approximately 25 exotic cars a month.
Remind me what was going on with the amount of pre-owned Bentleys and Rolls-Royces.
Well, I mean, in that 25 were the pre-owned.
Where were we ranked in pre-owned Bentley sales?
All right, I'm supposed to be, this is my interview.
I know you won't talk about yourself, so I'm adding to it.
In certified pre-owned, we were number 1 in crew-built Bentley and Rolls-Royce, United States.
Thank you. I knew it was something like that. I had a hard time remembering.
So I was especially proud of that because we were in a city that nobody drove them. Really. So unlike a street corner in Lauderdale, Palm Beach, Miami, where you might see some of these cars at a light in a downtown or a social area, or maybe South Tampa, but I think that we mainly, we were in Clearwater, Florida, and I think our main local customer was probably Sarasota, the nearest.
Yep.
With the occasional Tampa, which was about 45 minutes away. But I think that we sold easily 3/4 of the cars 500 miles away or more. And it was all telephone, telephone, telephone. We used to call it a marketing job where selling a car got in the way. All we did was dial, dial, dial. And I remember, God rest his soul, our factory rep, Rodney Moore, said, listen, a lot of dealers are talking about what you guys are doing, and they want to know some secrets. And I said, Rodney, I'm happy to share. We each call about 100 customers every single day, legitimately logged, not exaggerating. The average number of dials was 500 a week per person, and we typically use Saturday because we could actually wait on some real customers if that didn't happen on a weekday. So he came back to me and he says, I shared with the other dealers what you're doing. And he said they didn't want to know that. They just wanted to know if you had some secret advertising program or a postcard.
It's just on working hard. They didn't want to hear that.
We just talk to our customers all the time and fill them in what's going on in the market, or we just got one of these on trade, or how's your kid's ballet lesson?
That's right.
So how was it for you? I mean, I don't know that we ever discussed this, because my side of the Clay Curtis story is that I think it was our service director at the time, or a new GSM, let me know that his wife worked with your wife, and he had this kid that wanted to come sell exotic cars who never sold cars before. So I'm thinking, well, that makes sense to bypass Hyundai and Honda and Chevrolet, and let's just go straight to Rolls-Royce and Bentley. Let's just hire the kid. He's a friend of yours. And of course, I didn't just take you on because you were a friend. I met you because you were a friend, and I was excited to have you, although a little concerned about getting you trained, that it wasn't all about which one do you get to take home tonight.
That's true.
That it was something about getting rid of them once in a while. So what was it like on your side, like before you met us, before you even walked in?
So before I even walked in, I mean, I had started working in the financial industry at Raymond James like a month after I graduated from college in '96. And, I did a 7-year stint there, and it was all sales. I used to speak in front of groups of people on how to transition their books from, traditional commission-based to fee-based products, right? Put yourself on the same side of the fence as the client. So I had, a little bit of sales experience from that, but I was still young. I mean, I started there at 22. I was still in my 20s when I started with you. Was referred in by, someone we both know well. I remember it was the fall of whatever year it was, 04 maybe. And, I needed, that you get your year-end bonus in the financial industry, right? So I had accepted this job with you in like October, but had to stay through Raymond James to get my bonus until the end of the year, right? And so one of the, the thing I think I remember the most, and not sure if it's fond memories, but surely memories I'll never forget, is I was working 2 jobs for those 3 months. October, November, and December, I was working car shows, automobile events, and parties while I was still working all day at Raymond James. Because you're like, you have to get going. You have to get going. You gotta start meeting people. And so,
is that how I talk? Like if you're ever imitating Jeff Stearns?
No, I'm going to do my impression. I'm going to do my impression of you later. That's for the end.
Okay.
So, it was really interesting, but at the same time, I had always, I had zero interest in the financial industry. It bored me to tears. cars I've always had an interest in. I mean, even growing up, I put a lift in my Jeep by myself. I didn't have a lift or anything, to throw it up on. I mean, I did work on my own cars. I learned how to rebuild a carburetor just by messing around. So, this was right up my alley. I grew up in DC, met my wife in college, and then, she was born and raised here in St. Pete. So I came down here right after we graduated. The one thing that I'm thankful for is that starting a life of sales is not something that just anybody can do. It takes perseverance. It takes growing thick skin. It takes thinking very quickly on your feet with a smile on your face all the time, right? For me, I was thankful that I was still moldable, if you will, at that younger juncture in my life, right? And it really, what I learned from one of the things you always said to me was, always listen to the best salespeople. Someone that you think is a great salesperson, listen to them and hear what they say and how they do it. Not everything they pick up is going to work for you because everyone's attitudes and personalities are different. But the amount of arrows they are able to grab and make your own is, it's invaluable. You can't buy it, right? And so, I took that to heart at the beginning. And we had such a wide range of characters. We had Randy, who had the best mustache of all time, right? And just nice Southern boy, like I could never be like Randy, hey, hon, like they would laugh at me. CJ would never even talk. He would just like whisper into somebody's ear and car sold. It's like, how did that happen? So it was great to be exposed to all sorts of different types of very high-end salespeople and all of their different ways. Even to a certain extent, our GM at the time, the fat man, I mean, he had to, I learned how to not bend the knee by watching him bend the knee so much.
Well, I mean, okay, so that he might end up being one of the people interested in listening to this. So
that's why I said it.
Hopefully you're okay.
I'm okay.
That he hears the fat man. Okay.
There's nothing I haven't told him to his face.
Okay.
But no, I think my reaction to it was, yes, I was young and I wanted to take the cars home, but the best way to learn a car is by driving it, right? And it led to one of my greatest arrows that I was able to put in my quiver, which is when I used to talk to clients about the cars, people would miss what really matters to the customer that's buying this kind of car, right? And so by taking it home, I had so many experiences where, hey, it looks great at the dealership, right? Standing around all these other toys, right? It's a toy store, it's a candy shop, right? But you'll never know how truly beautiful the lines on this car are or its performance or how it looks without, number one, obviously driving it yourself. Number two, seeing the car in motion with you not in it, because a car looks completely different when it's in motion. And a lot of the lines that are made for these high-end cars are made to be seen, to see beauty in motion, right? You also have to see the car not in the candy store. Go park it in the parking lot at Publix. Go into the grocery and look at all the other cars around you. You'd be like, whoa, that car is really nice. And then the final thing is, how do you feel when it's sitting in your garage? When you get inside, the kids are put to bed, all your responsibilities are done, you pour that cocktail, you wander back out in the garage, you just stare at it. And you're like, damn, that's a nice car. And, taking those home kind of, helps develop, the sales process for me. I mean, but just like anybody, I got to the point where it was a mode of transportation from A to B, right? I wasn't impressed anymore. I just wanted it to go. Either sell it or trade it, like do something. I know what they are. The only time I'd really start driving them again is when new models would come out, right?
So when you were new, it was about how does it look moving? How does it look from the outside, inside, out of its venue, in the garage?
Yep.
But in short order, you got jaded.
Mm-hmm.
And the only exciting thing about it was somebody owning it other than us.
Well,
after a while,
that was the point. You saw so many of them. You were trained on them. I could build one of those cars perfectly for a client in my sleep, and primary hides, secondary hides, veneers, what works, what doesn't. Don't put a tan soft top because 5 times after putting the top down, it's going to get rub marks in the C-pillars. All of those little things, I think a lot of salespeople, and I notice it as I made my travels throughout sales in the automobile business, reading the room is really important. And the person who's standing in front of you is buying the automobile there for a multitude of reasons. There are some people that are the tech geeks, right? All they want to talk about is displacement, horsepower and like torque variances and all the sort of stuff that the nerds like to talk about. I love that stuff. So I was able to carry that conversation. But one of the things I learned quickly is you don't want to have a conversation about technical specifications in a car with somebody that's buying it for the badge. They don't care. You lose them every time something comes out of your mouth technically. You need to find what makes them tick and apply the process to what makes them tick. Are they buying it because they want to look awesome when they show up to the ballet? Or are they buying it because, their girl said it was awesome? Are they buying it to impress friends? Did their neighbor just get one? Is it a competition? Or do you truly understand and appreciate the craftsmanship, the drive, the feel, everything that all the engineers thought about forever, But you can't talk about one thing when the room is the other. And that's something that I learned real quick. There are some clients, as you well know, I would never once have a conversation about the car. The conversation would be all about the emotional impact, right? Or the family, or how is it going to fit here? Or where am I going to put it? I mean, you and I both offered to store people's cars when they would give us the excuse, well, I don't have enough room in my garage. Well, we have plenty of room here. So I'm happy to put it in the showroom for you.
That's right.
But it was really important. And that's one thing that I took, kind of from, everything that you talked about and, constantly mentoring me. And, I was kind of wild and young and, having babies and, newly married. I was at the beginning of my life, my career and everything. Other than, learning as much as I did about sales and dealing with people and technique, I think the most important thing I learned from it all was money doesn't buy happiness. And learning that at such a young age was tremendously beneficial for me and tremendously beneficial for my family, right? I mean, if I hadn't learned that, I would have been chasing the dollar my whole life. I would have missed time with my kids, whatever the case may be. But, we came across so many miserable people. Not saying they were all miserable, but, right? People can scratch checks for $500,000 cars, but they're unhappy. And it has nothing to do, and they have all the money they could need. And so it really allowed me to step into out of my shell and be humans with them, right? And I think that's where people miss it.
So do you mind if I jump in here? This is the Jeff Stearns podcast. Do you mind if I participate?
Carry on.
Thank you. So a thing that I noticed, I'm so glad that you got something. Look, I sold cars 27 years. I've been a vendor to the business for 8 years. And I learned a lot of what matters to me in life from my customers. No doubt about it. The first store was Lincoln Mercury, and those customers were World War II vets.
Yep.
Over and over and over. And they love to tell the story of how they finally have some money. Here's what we did in the Great Depression. I worked the day shift. My wife worked the night shift. Here's how we got by. Here's how we put food, like putting food on the table stories and getting their kids educated, et cetera. And they're so proud of that. And so the stories would be about that. And then guess how long we've been married and guess how old we are. And I would get a lot of values from these, real greatest generation World War II vet. I have a lot of values from that customer. I've developed lots and lots of relationships, got lots and lots of lessons. when I moved later into Cadillac, it was still a similar age, depending on the car. If it was a DeVille or something, it was a similar customer age. But versus the Lincoln Mercury customer was often the people that didn't really have a lot of money their whole life, or did okay later, but just did okay later, very close with their family. And I'm not saying any of these people with money aren't close with their family, so I want to be clear about that. But they'd sold their house in New Jersey for $400,000 that they paid 15 for. And now they get a condo near us for 50, and they come home with 300,000 or 400,000 in cash in Social Security, and they can actually go buy something. The Cadillac customer was the same age and was a World War II vet, but they were often wearing a Rolex at 75 years old.
Yep.
Slightly different. Still plenty of them into their family and plenty of them that were happy. But I was able to tell that they were more affected than the first group. And then when we got into the Rolls Bentley, and obviously we met some of the greatest people in the world. You know, a name that comes to mind, I think he's gone, is, Ed Martell.
Yeah.
For example, just like the nicest. And by the way, we met plenty of the nicest people on earth that had $1 million piece of furniture or chandelier or something in their foyer, not to even be understood. But you said, I learned that money wasn't everything. What I learned is that money was the amplifier for wherever they were at emotionally, because the charitable people were 100 times more charitable. And the sympathetic people were 100 times more sympathetic. And the humble ones were much more humble. And it was obvious how humble they were, because they lived in if you're a CEO or everyone's in orbit because of your money, and it doesn't mean that they're all hangers on. There's just, you're either CEO of a company or CEO of your little world because you've co-signed for 27 of your friends' businesses or cell phones, and they can't afford to travel with you, so you're paying for them to travel with you, and et cetera. Like, these people have no one to play with. The younger they are, the less people. And I know we can name a few that we're not going to name names.
We're not names. Names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Yeah, we're not going to name names.
Yeah.
But I think that the person who lives in a vacuum, and what I mean by a vacuum, Clay, I mean they don't get any negative feedback. No one says, "Hey, Clay, you are being jerky. Hey, Clay, you are an a-hole."
Surrounded by sycophants.
So based on that, if they grow humble, it's just more impressive. To me, it's just more impressive.
Well, I think you make a great point about the amplification of either good or bad tendencies with money. I came across that not only in the cars, but with planes, right? If you had money and you had bad tendencies, those bad tendencies were coming to light. And I think that's why a lot of the times, celebrities have such issues, rock stars and stuff, right? Maybe they had those tendencies before, but they could never act on them, nor did they have the money, the power, the wherewithal, the contacts to be able to do it. Now, all of a sudden, they have all of that.
And time on their hands.
Right. And
even if you've got the money and you've got the sphere of influence and all that, if you're working 50, 60 hours, it's still harder to do than if you're
exactly right.
Having your first cocktail at 10 in the morning. Right.
And, I was really, so that was really important to me. That was a life lesson that I've never forgot. And like you said, the good people, the good clients, we've all had clients like that. One of them comes to mind that he liked all black stuff. Still one of my most favorite humans of all time. I talk to him probably once a month at minimum, still to this day. One of the things he said to me, we were riding in his Phantom on the way over to Orlando to go see Tiger Woods' Carrera GT. Now, we didn't want that Carrera GT because it was silver terracotta. Everyone had silver terracottas, right? He's a black guy. But we wanted to drive it. We knew the handler. So we were on our way over there, and he turns to me and looks me dead in the eye while he's driving, says, "Clay, you want to know what makes me tick?" I'm like, "Well, Mr. X, I have no doubt you're going to tell me." And he said, I don't buy these cars because like, I want to be like that awesome guy. Like he goes, if I come up to a light and I see the single mom with a bunch of kids and a beater, I feel bad. I'm like, so does everybody. But he goes, but when I pull into the Starbucks and some asshole in a 7 Series BMW gets out of his car thinking his shit doesn't stink, he goes, I'm going to put my car right up on his door and just give him a look and walk in. And he goes, that's what makes me tick. I'm like, so taking pleasure in the misfortune of other people gives you pleasure. And he's like, no, just people that they have it, but they're still not right. And I'm
Just
like,
people that deserve it.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.